Hey y'all, it's Nancy the Handy Scandy. Welcome back for another crafty venture. This is a video that I shared over on the Whimsy Stamps channel, but I wanted to share it here with you guys as well. So here we go. We are making a Halloween trifold card. Now this is way outside of my comfort zone. I am not mechanically inclined and this may not seem like it's very mechanical, but for this brain, yeah, it was a struggle. But that's not where I intended to go when I started out, but I followed my process. So again, real life, right? So you can see that I start out by prepping my paper. I'm using my anti-static bag, and then I'm using that big surface sweep brush, which I used to think, why would anybody want that? But it's an amazing brush. Side note. So I wiped off all the excess. Of course, I used my Versamark sticky ink to ink up my image, and then I'm heat embossing it with embossing powder from my stash. I believe it was espresso beans or coffee beans, something like that, from Brutus Monroe. And I actually hit that twice when I was stamping, just because my Versamark pads are dirty and they're old, and I just wanted to make sure that I had really good coverage. So I actually stamp a couple different background stamps, and I do them all multiple times. So you can see that I am employing my fussy cutting skills because I cut out each window pane. There are no dies for this to my knowledge. And, I didn't play. I don't know if there are other square dies that may have worked, but this was my process. So it is what it is. Now you saw in the beginning I had some really small scissors, and I did kind of a rough cut of each pane. And then I came in with these more precise scissors and just doing a much neater cut, being a little more, well, precise, and just trying to make sure that I have a nice, neat cut. And again, I'm not a perfectionist, but I wanted it to look neat. So here I'm also just adding just a little bit of extra color with my Arteza Everblends, just a couple different shades of brown, mostly like tans actually, because they show up much darker on this brown cardstock. So you can see I've got a mask. I don't often mask, but I wanted to stamp this beautiful brick wall. Again, it's another background stamp, and I think it's gorgeous, and I thought it set the scene for the rest of the card. So as I mentioned earlier, I did hit this a couple times with the Versamark just to make sure that I had really good coverage. And now I'm using fired brick, actually, embossing glaze. Now it's the glaze, it's not the powder. I really like the glazes. I like the translucency, so it adds color and it kind of enhances whatever color it's stamped or it's poured over, if that makes sense. I really like the glazes. So there is the start of my scene. And now I'm trying to figure out, what do I want in the background? I went all through these papers. So we have the Nevermore 6x6 pattern paper. And I love the artistry in this pattern paper. But as I was kind of auditioning the paper to see exactly what part I wanted to show through my window, that's when my brain realized this was going to be more complicated than I thought it was going to be. I don't know if you could tell my thought process in figuring things out there. But I decided ultimately that I was just going to create a hinge. So that's exactly what I've done. I've scored at about 1/8 of an inch. And then I used my bone folder just to finish, kind of burnish that down. And then scored again, not quite at 5.5. So here I'm auditioning this beautiful background stamp again. This one is called Tree Silhouette. And if you have been watching the design team, you may have seen this particular stamp used multiple times already because it's perfect. It's perfect. But as I've said before, I can't leave well enough alone, even when I use pattern paper. So, of course, I had to create more of a spooky scene. And again, I used an embossing glaze. This was the Rustic Wilderness, which is one of the newer distress colors. And I chose green because on the scene it's a bright full moon. So you can see a little bit more color and definition than you would if it were less of a full moon. It would be really dark and black. And now I am adding my window and wall scene to the hinge. So I just have some really, really strong, it's like a score tape. It's that double-sided adhesive tape. It's not a wet tape. It's or it's not a wet adhesive, it's a tape. And so you can see that I left a little bit too much white up at the top. I had trouble lining it up, but I got it on there, and I have my foresty scene in the back. And now I have this sweet girl. A lot of people might not think she's sweet, but I think she's sweet. This stamp is called Happiest of Haunts, and it has the sentiment that says Happiest of Haunts to you and yours. And it is one whole scene, so it has essentially like she's looking out a window, and it has the girl, and it has the crow and the cat and the spider web up in the corner and the spider. But I cut it all apart, and I brought in my spiders and my spider webs from This Calls for Confetti, the Victorian Gothic Halloween mix. So I just pulled out the bits and pieces that I needed and just created my scene, because I needed my characters to be in different places. So that's why I decided to cut them out. Now I did color them up with my Arteza Everblend Ultras off screen. And as you can see, I have her sticking out, or you could see in a previous scene, I had her sticking out the window. I didn't want her inside, like I wanted her leaning out. So that's kind of the story there. Now here I am using the Build a Graveyard set, and I just wanted to add more to this kind of foresty, outdoor, night, woodsy scene. I don't know. So just have a couple tombstones. I didn't add anything to them. They are just silhouettes. I did add the little skulls, and I used a glitter cardstock, and I did 2 of the gates, and I used a glitter cardstock with them as well. And 2 bats as well. I have 2 bats here, and I'll use 2 more bats on the very inside. And the ghosts I cut out of vellum, and they are from the Boo die set. So I have used a lot of different stamps and products in this particular video on this card. Now here you can see I'm using that woodsy background scene again. It's the tree silhouette, and I did actually 3 generations of stamping, or 2 generations before I actually stamped inside the card. So you can see that I have it all open, and that is the inside of my card. It's very faint. In person, it's not as faint as it looks on screen. But I did the first generation, and then I did the second generation, and then this just gives me a little bit of a hint, excuse me, a hint of a background. And if you guys know me, you know I don't typically do anything on the inside, but this card became, it took on a life of its own. So I felt like the inside was just way too naked if I didn't do anything to it. So again, stamp that background stamp. You can see where I put the other bats on there. And then the Halloween greetings, that sentiment is from the Grim Reaper stamp set. You can see that I did some little ink blending along the inside. I did not do it anywhere else. But also you can see there that I put some acetate on the window. I didn't put it on where she is because she's leaning out the window, so that window is open. So I know the perspective is weird, like is she inside and the forest is behind her? Is she outside and she's leaning into the house? I don't know, it's a little weird. So something I would do different if I were to remake this card is clean up the back side of the front panel, because you can see all of the tape and the back side of all the images and stuff. So I would re-stamp the window, cut it out, and then kind of just cover it up and mask it, if you will, so that the inside is clean too. All right, guys, that's about it for me today. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. As always, I would appreciate a thumbs up if you like the video. If you are not already a member of my crafty tribe, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I will be back with plenty more to come, and I'd love to see you back here and spend some time with you, and I would enjoy spending time with all of you downstairs in the comments section, so I will see you there. Until next time, guys, this is Nancy, the Handy Scandy. Mwah! I'm out.